dimmed as our eyes met and you saw me. And forevermore, I'd like to share that vintage dream. Yeah, forevermore, we're living in that vintage dream.
Okay, Carole, welcome to 185 Church Street. You've never been to this location.
No.
Well, this studio space
Not
in its
the
current
studio.
form, because this studio changes all the time, and you never know what you're going to get sometimes when you walk into the studio space. So, talk to me about Henry's. Like, what do you actually do for Henry's, and how long have you been with us?
I've been with Henry's for 5 years. I started at the old church location, and now I work for the services department. So I am in charge, or I assist with photo finishing, repairs, image repair, anything that is a photographic service that we offer. I have a little hand in it. I'm the little fairy in the background that tries to make things happen.
And how much of your position at Henry's has affected your camera collection in some sort of way? Because photo finishing is what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Is that why you've kind of chosen all these weird and wonderful cameras that we have on the table here?
I mean, the camera collecting started a lot before I even started working for Henry's. Working here definitely exacerbated that, and I did find a lot more cameras. There's always so many different kinds.
Yeah, and you kind of get into the weeds, because I see a camera on the table here, probably one of the first cameras that we should maybe talk about, because I think this might be the earliest kind of camera that I see on the table. And you were saying kind of off camera here that this one here is from like early 1900s.
Yes, so this was one of the first commercially available cameras. So before this, if you wanted your portrait taken, you had to go to a photographer and you had to sit down for like a full 5 minutes, still not move, and that would be your portrait. That would be used likely at your funeral, and that was your only existing photo. When these came out, it allowed people to actually document their lives and birthdays and special events. And it is the first camera. It was a little cardboard box.
Who makes this camera?
This one is a Kodak and was actually manufactured in Toronto. There used to be a Kodak factory in Toronto a very long time ago.
We'll get some close-ups on the camera itself, because I think the marking on the back makes this camera kind of unique. And it's really funny that we're sitting in our Church Street downtown Toronto location. All the history I think about on this street specifically, it's pretty amazing. And I think this is a really cool camera that really shows you the first kind of Gen 1 of consumer cameras. That's what I think is the most.
How far we've come from a cardboard box to a beast to mirrorless.
Yeah, and this actually does kind of feel like a cardboard box.
It is.
Which is
it
really
is actually
funny.
cardboard.
So how does this camera actually even work?
So you would open it and load your film. I'm pretty sure, so this one uses an older type of film, but there are some Brownie cameras that actually use 120 film, which is still manufactured and developed today. This one uses, I believe, 116, so it has a larger spool. So you would put your film over here, and then like latch it onto this side, and you would wind it with the knob on the side. So like once you put your film in here, you would insert it back, and you were ready to go. Honestly, it's a pretty simple camera. It's just a camera obscura. I don't even think this has a lens. It's just a shutter that opens and closes. It is as basic as it gets.
Yeah, whereas this is like an advanced pinhole camera, I guess.
Yeah, it's a cardboard pinhole.
Cool. So we start like early 1900s. I know that Kodak was essentially like they got started in like I think it was 1880, 80s, late 80s. I think something like that.
Late 1800s.
Yeah, I don't think people really understand how new photography really is. Like it hasn't been around for that long, because we have pictures of our family, for our whole lives. But then they don't think about like the cameras that that
wasn't always available until in the last century.
Exactly, exactly. So where do we go next after a camera like this? Because you have a pretty vast collection and you've kind of organized them by date. So what maybe came after this?
I mean, after this one, a little bit after, I guess I would go for this one. So this one is incredibly small. It was popular in Japan during World War II. There were a lot of shortages for a lot of things, including film. So one of the solutions that they had was to use half of 35. So they would cut 35 millimeter film in half and create 17 millimeter film. It doesn't have the best quality in the world because of the film size.
But this camera functions.
Oh yeah, she works.
That's
it's
crazy.
it's a very simple shutter. It has one speed, actually two, bulb and one speed. I think it's 1/25 of a second. And it does have a couple apertures, 4.5, 6.3, and 8. So it does give you a tiny bit of range, not too much.
Yeah, and what's kind of funny about the shutter speed is that like having fast shutter speeds didn't actually come until World War One, when like Canon started to make cameras that shot 1/500th of a second, and that's where this funny like rule comes into play with sports photography. They have the rule of sports photography is if you want to freeze motion, you're shooting at 1/500th of a second, and that didn't really even become available until World War One, when Canon actually brought out, I think it was something like a very, very early model. It was like one of their first SLR cameras.
Yeah,
that
it
came
also
out.
had to do with the film. The film speeds were not that fast until like later in the 1900s.
Yeah. And what I love about this camera is it has a little viewfinder that's like, it's so tiny. Like,
Yeah, it's a rangefinder, so you can use a rangefinder, and it also has a waist level finder
Yeah.
at the very top.
And of course, I mean, look at how advanced this tiny little camera was with the square lens hood. These are like the most sought after lens hoods out there right now. And I think maybe Fujifilm took some things from this little tiny camera right here.
Some inspiration for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one is a mighty. So it's definitely tiny but mighty.
Is this like the smallest film camera that is available?
One of the smallest, yeah. I think there are some other small cameras that are considered spy cameras that come inside of watches and
Fair
all
enough.
sorts of crazy things. But yeah, functioning camera, I would say, yeah, this is probably the smallest.
I know, or we might be veering from the list here, but you do have a spy camera on the table right here.
Yeah.
Can you show us this one?
Yeah, so this one some people consider a spy camera as well. It uses 16 millimeter film. I don't believe it was actually used for any espionage, if I'm being honest, but just due to its size and how it works, people consider it that way. So this is a Minolta 16, and it has a pull housing in order to like load the film and activate the shutter. It's a rangefinder as well, so you would view through here. And it uses very small cartridges of 16 millimeter film. It's not manufactured anymore. Some places will re-roll it and you can purchase it from them, or you can do it yourself.
Yeah, and this is what's really funny about some cameras that catch on just because of the design.
Yeah.
And this is definitely one of those. These, like, I feel like maybe James Bond had something, like the original James Bond had something like this in his pocket. And of course, we still got actually a very usable viewfinder on this camera too. So this is actually very clear, which is quite nice. So this one's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and inside here, I have more viewfinders.
Oh, you can attach different ones?
Yes.
Oh my
So
goodness.
here is number 1, and I think number 2 is in there. Oh, it's for the lens.
Okay, right on
Yeah.
the front of the camera. That's where I would
Exactly.
attach. Okay, that's kind of interesting.
You
And it's
can
just
do so.
adding like magnification, I guess, or
Yeah, I believe so.
oh, that's cool. Wow.
It's in the original wrapping paper, which is falling apart.
So where do you find some cameras like this? Like, where are you going to find something, especially like this?
Honestly, a lot of antique and vintage markets. I do enjoy just going around and looking at other people's garbage, because sometimes it is treasure. There's also a lot of camera shows in the city. Like I mentioned, there used to be a Kodak factory a long time ago in Toronto, so I feel like that's why there's a lot of remnants of all kinds of old photographic gear. There is a photographic society. Is it Toronto? Oh, I might have to look this up because it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Is it Toronto Historical Photographic? No.
Something like
the
that.
Historical Photographic Society of Canada.
Okay.
And basically they organize a lot of camera shows and auctions and things like that. Trunk shows. So a few cameras I have found at a show at bottom of a bin that has been probably in a garage forever. Bad condition, but then it's like a little project. You get to fix it up. And then some other times people have cameras from family members that like have passed away or have donated them, and they're in relatively good condition. So like most of them actually work.
Yeah, which is really cool. And think about how long these cameras have been around and they actually still function today, which is it's very much not the case of certain models that we sell, unfortunately, today. So, these are cameras that actually do last almost a lifetime.
Yeah, most of them are completely mechanical, which is why they last so much. Anything that has to do with electronic components has a end of
batteries.
Yeah, end of
chips.
life date.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about the tiny little camera. We went to the spy camera, but what take us back on track in terms of like chronological order that you kind of laid out for us?
Chronologically, I guess maybe I would go for this one. This one's from the 40s, so around the same time-ish of the hit camera. Also, this one's called a hit camera. I forgot to mention that. It's a hit camera, and the film that it uses is called hit film. This one is my personal favorite. She comes in my bag wherever I go because she is so small. And
so just for reference and like for the audience's sake, we were sitting at a dinner, and this is how this whole idea of this conversation kind of came out. So we're sitting at a dinner, and Carole's just like taking things out of her purse to maybe grab some lip balm or something like that. And this comes out of her purse, and she said, this is her everyday camera, everyday carry camera.
Yeah.
And this is tiny. So, but this is an actual functioning camera as well.
They do say that the best camera in the world is the one that you have with you. So I really like this one because she fits in my bag and just comes everywhere with me.
Yeah.
It actually uses 35mm film, which is kind of impressive for the size. It does have its own cartridges. So you have to load your 35mm film onto the cartridge in the dark. And it does a pretty great job. It has a Schneider lens, which are used for enlargers and some large format cameras. So the glass in this tiny camera is actually quite impressive. And
it's a fixed focal length too.
Yeah, fixed focal length, and like it is heavy. Like it is pretty sturdy.
Oh yeah, it's got some weight for sure.
So for its size, it does a fantastic job.
Yeah, viewfinder on the top here, and then we've got some like focusing kind of mechanisms on the lens itself. And then this is essentially your winder and shutter.
Correct.
And that's it. There's film in this camera right now.
Yes, I have some black and white film in there. Because you have to load your film into the cartridges, it can be a little bit tricky for some labs to develop just because the canisters are unlabeled. Some labs will do it for you. Some other labs will not touch it, understandably so, because they don't want to damage their own machines because they don't know what film you got going on in there. But since it's black and white, it's pretty easy to develop at home.
So talk to us about some of the film that we actually develop in Henry's, because we get asked this all the time, is do we develop film?
Yes.
What do we actually develop?
We develop C41 35mm film.
That's it. In color.
Yes, C41.
Yeah.
The chemistry is C41.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. So that's a really cool camera. I love that. That is your everyday kind of camera too. Such a fun little camera to carry around. And this is what we were kind of talking about, is like the idea of watches. And I think this whole like kind of renaissance that's kind of happening with wrist watches. People are looking for items that they can buy today and that are going to last for a very long time. And then also items that cause you to have an interesting conversation, and that's what kind of spurred, of course, like this whole conversation that we're having today.
Yeah, it's
is
definitely
literally
a conversation starter.
that camera. Yeah, for sure. So cool. What's next?
What's next? Maybe we can try this one. So this one's a little German camera. So this one shoots 35, just like this one, but you can see the size difference. It's quite a bit, honestly, for them to shoot the same format. So this one is really interesting because it is a 35mm camera, but it has a waist level finder, and it is pretty bright. And this one, it has removable lenses. It's a little bit beat up because my cat decided to do some remodeling in my house. But it fell off a shelf, and she's still in perfect condition, just a little bit dented. So it is very sturdy. And this one has a pretty interesting shutter. So this one, the mirror doubles as the opening shutter blade. So the mirror is the shutter, and it is pretty clunky. It doesn't have that many speeds. It is a very interesting design. So this is not the same shutter that you would find, for example, in a Leica. Those are the most common ones. This one is a very interesting design that did not pass on to other cameras.
This almost seems like this is like where the DSLR kind of came from. Would you say that's kind of the case here? Because if the mirror is actually flapping up, then like that's almost it looks like the mechanism within a DSLR. Very
similar, but a DSLR will have a shorter curtain.
Yeah.
This one doesn't.
This one doesn't.
So like that is the difference. Like the mirror in this case is the curtain.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's so funny. And like people are obsessed with these viewfinders that you kind of look down onto, and that's like prolific for street photographers who are trying to be a little bit more stealth. And I think this is an interesting example of that.
Yes, for the viewfinder, definitely the shutter, it is funky and clunky. So I don't know if it's very stealthy.
Yeah.
But for framing and focusing, it definitely is.
Attach the lens on here.
Let me put the lens on for you.
Look at this viewfinder. That's kind of cool. And you said your cat kicked this lens off of a shelf.
Yes.
It's alive. It still works.
Oh,
fine.
yeah, it's still alive, and the lens is perfect, just a little bit dented. And I just gotta find a new lens.
Not a little bit dented, actually. There's quite a big dent.
it's quite dented, but for the fall that it took, it should have perished.
Yeah, that is too funny. So on this camera, of course, you have the viewfinder. You're looking down onto it. Is this off to the side here your shutter speed?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it does, because of the shutter design, it is very limited.
Yeah.
It is very limited, and you do not have that many speeds. So it goes from like, what is it? From
bulb.
Bulb, 25, and the fastest is 150.
Yeah, so again, not a camera you're shooting sports with. This is pre.
No, it does have a sports finder if you want it. I don't know if I would recommend it. It just opens to the front.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. It has a little, there you go.
Oh.
And then it's a little hard, but yeah, it opens from the front, and you can use it as a sports finder.
That's funny. And then of course, to focus, you're just finding it with the lens itself.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you do focus through the lens.
Very cool. Such an interesting viewfinder. We'll get some close-ups of this for sure. So what comes next?
Well, after this, very similarly, I guess I would say maybe a twin lens camera. This Yashica 44. It also has a waist level finder.
Did you redo this camera at all? Because this looks in excellent condition.
No, so this one actually, it's in original condition. I love the color. I fell in love with it. Most of them come in like a baby blue. There's the Rolly.
Rolleiflex,
The Rolleiflex, yeah. But the baby Rolly, this would be the equivalent. This is the poor man's baby Rolly.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to ever gift me an actual baby Rolly, I would not complain. But
this doesn't scratch the itch, but it's as close as you can get.
It does, because like it's a gorgeous color. I love it. So the beautiful thing about these cameras is that they have two identical lenses. So they're called twin lens cameras. So basically you focus and frame your image through their first lens, which is attached to the ground glass. And it is the second lens that actually has the shutter and takes your photo. So when you're doing close-ups, you do have to account a little bit for the discrepancy. It's called parallax effect. But if you're just shooting on the street, it is pretty stealthy. This one has a pretty quiet shutter.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the Rolleiflex, very prolific photographer Vivian Meyer used a camera very similar to this. What do you actually use these cameras for other than just day-to-day stuff? Like, is there a camera on here like, oh, this I would use for, say, portraiture versus something else? Like, what do you actually use these cameras for?
I like to do a little bit of experimental photography, so that's a little bit of a tough question. I like to do multiple exposures and a combination of portraits and landscape, so overlapped. This one, because it's small, I would go in my bag. So this would be more of like an everyday camera that just fits in my bag and I just have with me in case I find something that I want to take a photo of.
Hilarious. Such an interesting, it's a great, like I've seen many cameras that look like this Rolleiflex type of camera, but never one in this color and condition. So that's
it is in really pristine condition. I saw it, they posted it on Instagram, a camera store, and I was dreaming about it and eventually went to a camera show and they had it, and I'm weak.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
So what's next on this hit parade that you've brought to our store here today?
Maybe I would say we could go with the SX70. So these ones are a little bit different. I'm sure most people have seen them. The wonderful Polaroid cameras.
Yeah.
So these guys, they don't really make them like these anymore. It's an SLR, basically.
Yeah,
it is an instant camera, but it's an SLR, so you do get to look through the lens.
Probably the most recognizable camera that there really is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Ansel Adams shot with them as well. So super, super common. Amazing, gorgeous design.
We still see customers bringing this camera in looking for film.
Yes,
for this.
and we do sell the film.
And we do sell the film.
We do.
Yeah.
And then very similar but different. It's also an SX70, but this one's a sonar. I love this one because it has an autofocus. So this over here is the sonar. What that means is that it emits sound like a bat, and it detects how far an object is like that, and that's how it determines how to focus or how far, how close something is.
That's so funny. And what's really interesting is, like, this is, how old would you even say something like this is?
I would say from the 70s.
70s?
Yeah,
Okay,
the
so,
SX70 is from the 70s.
And what's funny is, like, DJI is coming out with LiDAR autofocus detection. And this almost would be essentially the same thing, except just the retro version of it, where LiDAR is essentially like shooting a laser across a scene, and it's measuring that distance and then finding perfect autofocus.
Yeah.
And it actually is even better than, say, like a Sony camera than using like the AI on like the face and eye. LiDAR is so much more accurate because it's actually like a laser hitting a subject, finding that focus, and then tracking that subject as it moves forward or backwards, which is really cool. So
yeah, that is crazy.
One.
It's like the OG, I guess, a little bit more rudimentary than lasers.
Yeah.
But yeah, bats know what's up.
This camera has some like almost like some interesting leather pattern. Is this something that you did yourself?
Oh yeah, when I found this one, I think I found it at a camera show at the bottom of a bin for like $30. It was untested, so they were like, I don't know, it's probably broken. You can have it, I don't care. So since it was already in very rough condition, I decided to try my hand at redoing the leatherette. It's my first attempt. It's a little bit rough, but it's definitely better than it was before.
Talk to me about probably the super, maybe most interesting looking one because of the lenses on the front of this camera. What is this camera, and tell me about it?
So this is a Nishika camera. It's what's known as a stereo camera. So what it does, it uses 35 millimeter film, but what it does, it takes a photo with each of the 4 lenses, but because the lenses are right next to each other, it gives you a 3D effect. So it's taking a photo of a scene, but from slightly different angles. So afterwards, you can edit it together and you can create what's known as a stereo image or a GIF, where you can see like an image from slightly different angles and it looks 3D.
Wow. Okay. So this is
from
like
the 80s.
I feel like I've seen this filter on like Instagram.
Yes.
Right
Yeah.
now.
It's very similar to a boomerang.
Yeah, a boomerang. That's exactly it.
Yeah, but this is the OG boomerang.
That is too funny.
Very 80s, and it is kind of ugly looking, but
It is an ugly camera. I'm not gonna lie, but
Yeah.
that's what kind of makes it.
it's
the
like
coolest.
like a pug, you know?
Yeah, Back to the Future. They're
Exactly.
calling,
Yeah,
they want
that's
their
what
camera
it
back.
feels like. A very futuristic design.
Okay, so I think we're coming close to the end here.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got is this one more camera to kind of go over, and I think this is probably maybe the most interesting. We maybe saved the best for last.
Yeah, this is my child. She weighs the same as a baby, so
And
might as well.
This is a Mamiya RB67.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this.
So Mamiya RB67, RB stands for rotating back, 67 stands for the negative. So she is a beauty, but also a beast. And this is how the back rotates. So because it's 6x7, you can do portrait or you can rotate it like that and do landscape. The beauty of this one is that it's completely mechanical, so it has no electronic components whatsoever. So it is very easy to service because it very, very rarely will need parts unless it's taking a tumble. And even if it has, it'll probably be okay. I have fallen in the ice with this and she's still fine. I was not. But the cool part about this one is that it's a modular camera, so you can interchange the back. So you can actually carry a couple of these and shoot whatever kind of film you want. So you can be like, oh, I want to take this photo black and white, or I want to take this photo in color, or like this different speed film.
You can
And
change.
you
You
can
can change sizes, formats, and everything, or is it all media format?
I mean, it's all medium format film,
Gotcha.
but there's definitely different backs that you can shoot. For example, there's one that is 6x4.5.
Okay.
So you could shoot that
Yeah.
format and then you would get 15 shots instead of 10. So this will give you 10 photos per roll.
And that's what kind of makes this camera maybe a little bit, it kind of expands the lifetime of this camera. If there are different formats, you may run out of a certain type of film and then you can switch back and kind of go to something else. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, there's also a lot of people that are converting Instax cameras into backs for this. So
Really?
yeah, it's a little bit of a DIY. You can find them on eBay, but then you can shoot Instax. So because these have amazing glass and it's a gorgeous lens, it really does give you like the most crisp image that you can find.
I was going to say, I was kind of excited to talk about this camera because I feel like I've seen a number of people look for these Mamiya type cameras because of the interesting look. Is this the camera that you might go to for a specific look, and maybe is it the favorite look? Like out of all these cameras, which
Yeah.
one does give you that favorite look that is super unique and hard to find anywhere else?
I mean, the beauty of this one is the size of the negative. So this is medium format. Once upon a time, this was what they used to shoot billboards in. So the quality, the definition, it's there. And from there, you can basically do whatever you want. And because it's modular and you can customize it, it allows you to do so many things, from multiple exposures, to shoot instant film, shoot different kinds of like film speeds, because you can change the backs. It is meant as a studio camera. It's not necessarily meant as as a street camera, but I don't like people telling me what to do.
Fair enough. So everybody, thanks so much for watching. And if you liked this type of content and want to see more from other camera collectors that I've kind of run into while working at Henry's, whether they work at Henry's or are out in the community, get in touch with us, and maybe we might record some more of these types of interviews, showing you some interesting, weird, and wonderful cameras. Thanks so much to Carole for joining us and bringing all these cameras here with us today. And that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks for watching.
We're living in that vintage dream.